See? There's me. There's Dylan. Okay. 3, 2, 1, start.
It was Beyonce who once said, "Who run the world? Girls." While women are becoming increasingly visible in the political realm, they were often the backstage directors in colonial times. One of these backstage figures was Elizabeth Murray, as shown on my card. While Elizabeth Murray, a colonial businesswoman, earned a lot of her money through her own work as a merchant, she was unique as a colonial woman in the facts that she demanded a prenuptial agreement, or prenup. She had control of her own property. She was an independent woman entrepreneur, and she remained in dangerous Boston during the Revolutionary War to help the war effort, when the easy and expected thing to do as a woman would be to flee with her husband. According to a letter quoted in the paper entitled "Patriot and Loyalist Women of the American Revolution: How Feminine Figures Dealt with the Challenges of War and the Confines of Gender," Murray wrote to her husband that, "If I go, poor creatures, they depend on me for protection." She said that, "As far as it is in my power, I will protect them." Elizabeth Murray was a woman who was independent and active in her own accords in the fields of marriage, her occupation, and protecting what she cared about: Great Britain, her home. According to the Women's History blog on Elizabeth Murray, she demanded a prenuptial agreement to control her property, which was likely because of the difference in rights between married and single women. Stated in the Gilder Lehrman Institute of American History AP U.S. History Study Guide, in every state, the legal status of free women depended on their marital status. Unmarried women, including widows, were called female souls or women alone. According to this guide, women had the legal right to live where they wanted to and to work any job to support themselves, just as long as it did not require a license or a college degree, which was, of course, restricted to males. As long as women were single, they could sue and be sued, write wills, serve as guardians, and act as executors of estates. Elizabeth Murray had a prenuptial agreement and continued to hold her single women's rights, which was very uncommon for women at the time. Murray's relationship status likely contributed to her success as a shopkeeper. According to the California State University Elizabeth Murray Project, she lived as a retailer and importer, selling her goods and helping other women open their own shops. The Murray Robbins family papers state that Elizabeth followed in her brother James's footsteps and trained as a merchant. She sold hats in her own shop and trained other women in her trade. According to the National Park Service's article on the Cummings sisters, she merchants of Boston, Cumming was Elizabeth's maiden name, in the colonial port communities, as much as 10% of shopkeepers were women. The article on the sisters said that they taught fine embroidery and boarded girls in their homes. Shopkeepers began to work directly with the London suppliers in the time around the Revolution, which caused an increase in the number of consumer goods. This cut out the middleman, which irritated the colonial merchants as they could not make their money now. According to the National Park Services, the Merchants Committee visited Elizabeth and her sister and threatened them for defying the committee. The Merchants Committee publicly denounced the sisters and quoted from the article, they were enemies to their country who preferred their little own private advantage rather to the welfare of America. The town governments and newspapers described the sisters as traitors to their country, and therefore the public saw the sisters as such. Due to this opposition, the sisters retreated to Concord, but Elizabeth stayed in Cambridge during the war. Elizabeth staying in Cambridge during the Revolutionary War shows her loyalty to the country. According to the honors thesis written by Michaela Fornicari on female revolutionary figures, the home was something that would define Elizabeth, and it was her duty to protect and guard it from those who threatened it. It was extremely dangerous for colonists to stay in their homes, as Fornicari's letter states that loyalists faced rebel attacks and ransacking. During the Revolutionary period, Elizabeth's husband, Ralph, was stuck in Boston, which created further issues for the couple. Fornicari's letter points out that if Elizabeth were to leave the farm and make her way to the city to join Ralph, they would immediately be identified as loyalists and would be persecuted for that reason. Their property would also likely be taken from them for that reason. Murray put her own wishes of being with her husband aside to keep her loyalty to Britain. This even led to the point of her marriage falling apart, since she chose to run the household, family, and finances instead of being with her husband. This shows Elizabeth Murray's ultimate pride and loyalty for her country, as she put her country before her love, which is not something many people would be likely to do. Elizabeth Murray was an independent woman who made her own choices in her marriage, occupation, and loyalty. Murray demanded a prenup because of the differences in rights in single women versus married women. She sold goods in her own shop and became independent of the middleman, which annoyed colonial merchants and caused Elizabeth to retreat. Finally, Elizabeth Murray showed her British loyalty through all of this and protected her home, even when facing extreme danger. She was a woman who made her own money and aimed to be independent. So when we are learning about the Founding Fathers and the leading men in society, always remember people like Elizabeth Murray and the women who ran the backstage. And some might even say, ran the world.
Look, we're still here.